Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Reviews, and I just got done watching Netflix's original film, See You Yesterday, directed by Stefon Bristol, who is a protege of Spike Lee. Actually, Spike Lee produced this movie, and it was an interesting concept as time travel kind of meets Black Lives Matter. And there's a couple elements in the movie that they do reference Black Lives Matter, but it's not in a way that I felt was going to be more abundant, kind of what the trailer showcased. And that's one of the reasons why I had talked about it before, saying this is maybe kind of a controversial thing Netflix is embarking on. I'm happy to report that it's not, the trailer was cut in a way that made it appear that it was something that it wasn't. So I'm very happy that it wasn't, because look, before we jump into it, let me just kind of explain here. When you want to discuss these kind of societal issues, which I do believe you should discuss, you always want to do it in a way that doesn't beat the audience over the head with it. When you do that, you run the risk of alienating a lot of people of the audience, and then you lose your message. Here, they didn't do that, but there are some problems with how it did integrate into Black Lives Matter, and I will talk about that because I feel that it was wholly unrealistic, to be fair. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I did enjoy the movie. I recommend it if you want to check it out. It's on Netflix right now, so I'd say in that regard, go see it. But let's talk about it, and they're going to be spoilers from here on out. So the movie centers around CJ, a 16-year-old high school junior going into her senior year, and her best friend Bastian, who are working on time travel because they want to present it at a school expo in order to get a full ride into MIT. Never mind the fact that if you were a teenager who was able to basically invent time travel, you wouldn't really need MIT. They would just kind of give you the doctorates. They would be like, oh yeah, no, you've already surpassed a lot of the people here. So the concept of what they were trying to do was a little bit, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't really buy that too much, to be honest with you. But what I did love was that their science teacher was Michael J. Fox, complete with a whole little Back to the Future reference that I thought was wonderfully done. It felt very in line with the scene, and it was a good little gag, and I really appreciate that. To be fair, there's a lot of Back to the Future references I've seen in movies over the years. This was, quite frankly, the best one I've ever seen, and I don't want to tell you what it is. Again, that had me laughing, and I was like, okay, bravo on that front. Bravo on getting Michael J. Fox involved. Now, in the process of trying to make this over summer break, on July 4th, they realize, CJ's older brother ends up getting killed by NYPD after being mistaken for two guys who robbed a bodega. Now, this forces CJ and Bastian to go back to the day. They only have 10 minutes to be able to run in and save the brother, but they get there too late because they run into CJ's ex-boyfriend, with whom during the testing phase, they actually ended up messing with him to the point of where he got hit by a car and he broke his arm. And again, this isn't the time travel like we saw in Avengers Endgame. This is not going to be alternate realities. This is straight up, one timeline, and they're going back. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing in regards to the science behind it. The way that they talk about it is once they go back once, they're going to go back and see themselves again. And then they figure out a way around that by using their friend's quantum, gold spray painted motherboards as to create a time splice in order to basically reset the clock. It's a very interesting way of going about it, rather than instead just going to another part of town and time jumping there and, kind of treating it like Back to the Future 2. So I thought that was a little bit of a leap of logic. I had to suspend my disbelief a lot in that moment, even though we're talking about time travel being developed by teenagers. Whatever. But again, they try to go back, and this time around, they try to stop the robbery in the bodega, thinking that's going to alter everything. And what ultimately happens is CJ from a couple weeks prior, he ends up being the one who gets shot and killed, Bastian gets shot and killed. So then Bastian dies in the future, and then, CJ is lost, but her brother's alive. She tells her brother. They go and talk to the dude Eduardo, who very much likes CJ, get him on board, and then they figure out a way to go back for her to save everybody. And at the end of it, her brother ends up sacrificing himself in order to save Bastian. And then Bastian's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I apparently have already died. There's already a lot of tragedy, but CJ won't let it go, and she ends up going back and that's where the movie ends. Is we don't know whether she succeeds or she fails. And the thing is, the movie is 87 minutes long, and it kind of feels like it's a shorter film. I feel that if you really wanted to convey a lot of this movie in a more of an emotional way, to give us more of the science or more of the character moments, which I felt would have been better to push it to a full 2 hours rather than 87 minutes with end credits, probably would have been the best bet. The shortest you can actually have a movie, a feature length movie, be is about 88 minutes. So this is right there at the very end of that thing. And there's, again, as far as the movie goes, it worked on a number of levels. I thought that the characters were good. I thought that the emotion they conveyed were good. I thought that the world building was good. A couple of my gripes has a lot to do with the societal events that they were pulling upon in order to kind of like touch bases on. For one, Michael Brown, that situation played heavily into the death of the older brother. Him and his friend were walking down the street in the middle of the road. Cops showed up. They shot him. Obviously, that's what they're referencing there. There was a bodega robbery that they got mistaken for. That was obviously in reference to Michael Brown and him strong on robbing a liquor store before engaging with a police officer back in Ferguson, Missouri, nearly 5 years ago now. And then, of course, later on, when the brother decided to sacrifice himself, he ended up doing it because Bastian was being choked by the cops, is what it appeared to be. And he looked down and he saw that the funeral program had changed from him to Bastian. And as a result of that, I kind of felt that they were invoking a bit of the Eric Gardner "I can't breathe" situation in a way that kind of felt it was a little bit on the nose, I think, but I get what they were trying to do, the emotion with it there. And what I liked about that was the brother didn't believe that time travel was a thing. He kind of in that moment realized that it was a thing. And I think he sacrificed himself knowing in that moment that was maybe what he was meant to do. And that could ultimately be the entire point of the brother at that point, was to sacrifice himself. So then his sister would be forced to finish her project and then make time travel a reality. But then he wasn't able to come back. That ultimately was a sacrifice. And I think that's kind of what they went for too. Again, touching on the Black Lives Matter thing, there's a scene in the movie where they're watching the news after the brother was killed. And the mom is watching the news, and it says like third day of protests over the death of the brother. And the mom's just sitting on the couch, kind of like blase, and she's like, I mean, and I get that she's very out of it. She's very upset. And that's just, CJ comes in and consoles her about it and whatnot. But in reality, those protests were oftentimes led by the parents, led by those who were directly impacted by this event. And they hinted at that at the beginning, where a 17-year-old unarmed black man was shot and killed by police. And that was something they were talking about. And here, the mom never even went out and led a protest. So I kind of feel like if I were the one writing the story, I would run the juxtaposition between the two. Both are seeking justice for what happened. The mom is seeking it on an outward spoken societal level, and the daughter is trying to seek justice by going back and manipulating time and trying to fix it. And I think that would have been an interesting element to explore, rather than just having the mom just sit on the couch and be upset. Or not even really look upset, just look kind of dead. I felt the scene, I get what they were going for. I get the emotion they were going for. I just kind of feel like, based on what they were touching upon reality-wise, failed to really kind of grasp what they were going after. Look, I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying I think it should have been written differently. But then again, I feel that the movie was also, and this is where it's weird, there's a lot of swearing in this movie. There's a lot of swearing in this movie. And when it first started off, it said TVMA. I'm like, TVMA? Okay, that's interesting. Because usually, I thought this was a PG-13 film. Tons of swearing in the movie. But it was shot like a kid's movie. That's the weirdest thing about this film, is it was shot legitimately like a kid's movie. And whoever the director of photography was, dude, straight up pull your rack focus a lot better. There were so many times in the movie I noticed that the focus, either they had autofocus on, or whoever was the focus puller was really late on their cue. But that's just a technical gripe. But really, the movie was shot and acted in parts very tongue-in-cheek, very high comedy, or, very much like a kid's movie from the early 90s is how I viewed it. And I felt that on a tonal level was across the board. I was like, what are you trying? Like, is this a drama? Is this a comedy? Like, what are you trying to do? And it didn't really work in that particular way. And the reason I'm talking about, like, the first time they jump back and try to save the brother, they run into her ex-boyfriend who has got a broken arm from being hit by a car. And as a result of that, he's chasing after them, and they run through all these people. Like, they run through a barbecue, and she's like knocking over, the barbecue pit, but like no charcoal or smoke or steaks fall out. She's throwing food, knocking over chairs, and they cut to this wide shot, and it was very like comical and over the top. And, given the gravity of the situation, given what they were trying to convey, I felt, again, tonally speaking, it was a bit all over the place. But that was kind of really about it. Those are really my only gripes with it. I did feel that the script was good. The dialogue felt a lot improvised by the actors in regards to the scenes where they swore. I do feel like they didn't write it with the swear words, but that the actors were just like, they riffed it, and I think it worked in a lot of ways. I was a little bit curious how kids living in Flatbush could afford the technology that they had, because they've got some Oculus headsets on, and they show this like CG scene where they're like Tony Starking this backpack, and I'm like, how do you even afford that? Like, how do you even remotely afford that? Like, I don't get any of this. How is any of this afforded? And then they kind of explain that because they do computer repair work on the side. And so I'm like, oh, okay, fine. I get how you're trying to explain this, even though that does come across as wildly, wildly unrealistic. But at the end of the day, not a terrible film. If you're looking for something to check out and you want to see something that would ultimately subvert your expectations based upon the marketing, this would be something to see. If they do a sequel to it, which they might, they do leave it open, I would definitely check it out. And if you want to see my ending explained video, that's over on 3 Buck Theater channel. But I do want to hear your thoughts if you guys saw it. Let me know down in the comments below. I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a fantastic day, and peace out.